How I built a modular wargaming board, part 7, the 4-way modular hill. That's right, a modular hill and part of a modular board. What I love about this, you can have it 4 different ways. So there's the first way I just showed you, where it's all together on top with the church on top. You can have it split into 2 separate hills like this that make up a kind of corner thing, or just have it at the sides. And finally, you can separate the 4 pieces into 4 corners, so there's a little bit of height at each corner of the board. But how do we make it? Well, to start off with, I started with the same way I've done all of the other ones, with a bit of board, and then from here I got a bit of cardboard just to mock up a template. So I drew a cross down the middle so I knew exactly what each piece would look like once it was on top. And then you can kind of see me tracing out the shape here. Then I cut that out and then made sure that I was happy with it and started to get a picture of an idea of what each piece would begin to look like. So from here I took some playmat foam and drew out the shapes that were going to be due to be cut out. You can see me doing this here. And so just cutting off the edges straight and then literally just drawing around them. Nothing complicated going on here. There you go. There's my cat, kind of making sure that I'm doing everything right. And yeah, not sure why I've included so much of this in the edit. It's not difficult to follow along, but obviously I think you're stupid. I don't think you're stupid. I think I might have included this because I've got 2 of them onto one piece just to kind of save a bit of material. Now from here I cut the boards into the 4 different ones. I wanted to keep them together when I was designing the thing, but then was happy to cut them up. And with this, I just advise that you're really careful, keep the knife vertical, go as slow as you need to go, but because it's really important to make sure you cut these accurately, because if you don't cut them accurately, then they don't kind of tessellate well with the other tiles, and then they just don't look good, and you have bigger gaps between them, and it's just not great. So just take your time on it, and they'll be great. From here, I used some of the instant nail stuff with the boards that I've used previously, and just glued them all in together. So you line them up, make sure that the wood isn't overlapping the foam, put a bit of weight on it, and then just leave it a while until it is dry. But in the meantime, you can then go ahead and cut out your foam. Now I'm trying to make this much more like a hill than a cliff, so I'm trying to keep the knife at a kind of flat an angle as possible as I'm doing this. You know, it's easy to cut straight through this stuff vertically, not so easy to do if you're doing it with the knife at an angle. So doing it that way, you get an angle on the edge of it, which is just going to help us out a little bit later on, but there are other ways we can get around it. And you end up with 4 pieces that look like that, and as I'm showing you here, you can have it in these 2 pieces, 2 separate hill pieces like that, 2 separate hill pieces like that. You can obviously have it all together, or you can have the corners. From here, I decided to add a second layer, so I just drew out a design. I spent way too long thinking about this, but I kind of drew almost like a heart shape here, and then a separate kind of oval shape, because I wanted to have some real variety between each different hill piece. I spent a good 10 minutes staring at this, choosing loads of different designs before I eventually settled on the one that we're looking at here. Then lined up the tiles, drew across it, got my set square to make sure that they were all nice 90-degree angles, which they, oddly enough, they were actually straight off the bat, so I was pretty happy with that. And then just once again, just use a knife to cut the pieces nice and neatly. Isn't that lovely? From here, it's just a case of just making sure that they all kind of fit together, they look together, because it's the last chance to kind of, you know, apparently I'm again showing what they're going to look like. But yeah, we get the idea now, Chris. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, and you can turn them the other way. Yes, we get it. Why have I included so much of this in the edit? You get it. You're not stupid. You understand this already. What's next? Okay, so next up we are actually gluing the stuff on. You can see there's a circle on this one. That's because I tried some spray adhesive to stick this oval bit onto the blue bit. Doesn't work. So settled on using a glue gun for this. So take your time on this. Glue gun is great because it does stick it really nicely, but it doesn't stick instantly, so that if you get it in the wrong place, you can't move it. You can slide it around a little bit once it's in place if you're using a glue gun. So yeah, each different piece, just gluing up the edges and just making sure I'm getting it right. And I think I near enough got it absolutely spot on. So I was pretty happy with how that went. But I'm keeping these all together as I'm doing this, because I think it's just important to try and eventually they're going to be all together. So here what I've done is I've cut up loads of bits of the excess foam, and this is just to kind of fill in the gaps here, because basically the more gaps you can fill in with foam, the less filler you're going to have to use. This is filler. I'll be honest, this is not the best stuff I used, and what happened here was I was doing it by hand, and I did this first corner by hand, and it was just really messy. I wasn't particularly happy with how it turned out, and so the rest of it I actually ended up doing with a kind of spatula, with an actual filling tool. So this is the corner that went not so well, and the other ones are much better. But ultimately, it's going to get all covered over in a second anyway with brown paint. Ta-da, as you will see. So I just painted that brown. Here you can see me adding some spray adhesive. And for this top part, I decided to go with a slightly different blend. So there's some summer flock in there, which has got some purples and yellows alongside the greens as well, because this doesn't have to match up with any of the rest of the board. So nothing complicated here, just flicking flock over the top, which sounded nice as I said it there. And then the next layer kind of down, I'm adding more of the kind of more standard coloured flock that you've seen on the rest of the board. Again, this is just with having covered it in spray adhesive first. And then the next, like towards the bottom here, I've chosen a much darker thing, just so there's a bit of variety. So I'm kind of going around the bottom edge with this. And then you'll see me finishing up just in a second with the same type of flock that's been used at the edges of the rest of the board. Adding some dark stuff in that kind of small valley-ish area, I guess you'd call that. Yeah, and here's the final level of flock. This is kind of the brighter one. And once again, just flicking it all over, getting it all over the table, getting it everywhere. But I really like how the colours have all come together, and there's some nice variety in it. So it's not just, oh, it's a hill, it's green. There's some darker and there's some lighter, there's some purples, and there's some places where the brown shows through as well, which I think is quite nice. Now it's time to cut it all up, because the plaster's obviously kind of joined it together, and this is just a case of using a sharp knife and taking some time. It's not difficult to get through, but that's how I did it, just cutting through slowly so that these pieces are separated, but they can still go back together really nicely. And from here, there was a huge amount of flock to get rid of, because obviously I really overflocked it, which is not a bad thing. It just means that you've got a lot of excess to get off. So I like to try and do this all on one surface. You can tip it all off, and then you can scrape it up with a ruler or a bit of wood or whatever, and then you can save it for the next piece of terrain that you're making, and then you know that the color is consistent as well. So that's what I'm doing here, and it means you have to buy less, so it's cheaper. Right, now to cover up a little bit the gaps between the tiles, I've decided to finish this off with some static grass. So got a static grass applicator here, and these on a surface like this is absolutely perfect, because it sticks up really nicely, and you'll see as I put more and more on in this video just how much texture and variety it adds to it, and just makes it feel a lot more like a real life living thing, rather than just something with some flock on top of it. So those longer grass patches, I think, really add something, and particularly with the verticality that the static grass applicator allows you to have. So yeah, that was then kind of covered in glue and isopropyl alcohol just to hold it into place, and there you have it. That's it there in place with a church on top, as part of the modular gaming board. So really hope you've enjoyed that. It's a really versatile piece for the board, which is versatile enough as it is. So please like, comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching. Back with another video soon.